Welcome to Monet Cafe. I'm artist Susan Jenkins. If you're new here, I hope you will subscribe and click the little bell icon to be notified of future videos. Today's lesson is on transparency, how to achieve the illusion of transparent glass. This is often very mysterious for people, but I hope to unlock some of those mysteries in this video. Now, I'm just working at my little kitchen table here, and I want to first go over my supplies. I'm using regular drawing paper. It's a toned gray paper made by Strathmore. It is not sanded like a lot of pastel papers are, but I have found that I can use regular drawing paper to do charcoal sketches, pastel sketches, and like this one, I protect them with glassine sheets in between the pages, unless it's something that I'm doing just for a lesson or, I'm just kind of playing around. So I like to share this so others are aware you can use a sketchbook. Now, I love using these. They are the Prismacolor Nu Pastel, spelled N-U pastel, and they're a harder pastel. I have the 96 set that you saw pictured there, but they have smaller sets available as well. I'll also be using a lighter value charcoal pencil. Charcoal is better to use with pastel. It's made from the same material. You really don't want to use regular pencil. I also will use a kneaded eraser just in case I need to correct anything. And by the way, my patrons will get this reference image. This is your homework assignment over the weekend. I'm kind of combining some of my Patreon videos with the videos I provide here on Monet Cafe. Now, I like using these mats to mark off standard sizes. These mats, just so you know, they're 8 by 10 on the outside and 5 by 7 on the inside. So you get double bang for your buck. And I also often crop my images, my photo images, to be the same proportions as what I'm drawing. Oh, and one more supply. I had to have some semi-sweet chocolate chips. Okay, now I'm just looking at my image and showing how I often draw things out. I really look at negative spaces, the shapes of things, and I like an image like this to where there's lots of neat negative spaces. The composition's neat. I'm speeding up the drawing portion. This is more about the reflection, so I didn't want this video to be so long, and but I will give you guys some advice as I sketch here. These, by the way, are some zinnias that I grew from seed myself, and they have produced so many flowers over the spring and summer, and they're really just about done. And so I'm going to call this one Remembering Spring. I'm telling you, I've had so many flowers from this one zinnia bush or pot of zinnias that I have in my backyard, and they're all different colors. They were just beautiful. I have slowed this down a bit now just to show you a little bit of how I measure. Often I just use halfway points. Once again, my image, my photo image, I have cropped it to be 8 by 10. Most phone apps, your regular phone editing software, will allow you to crop to standard sizes. And I've got my image on my drawing pad as 8 by 10. So I know the proportions are the same, but I want to zoom in here and show you something. Since this video is about hopefully taking some of the mystery out of transparent objects, I encourage you to realize the fact that even though something is see-through, there are still colors and shapes. And the more you can focus on the shapes and the value and the color, the less you'll be confused that you're looking at a clear object. When you look at transparent glass, you do in fact see color. Some of it is reflected off of the smooth surface, and some of it is passing through the glass and refracted by it. I'll talk about refraction in a minute. I also want to point out this area right here, the little ellipses. Ellipses are circles that are turned. You're not seeing it from straight forward. It's got an angle to it. And often the water inside of a vase will be misinterpreted as a ring that goes around the whole glass. But notice there is an outer darker ring that you see, and then there's an inner ring because there's a thickness to that glass. So if you can see where I've drawn this, it's got a ring inside that doesn't go all the way to the edge because there is dimension to the glass. So getting your drawing right is, to me, crucial with something like this. You want to make sure you have things accurate before you commit to actually adding pastel or color. And I don't get fussy with detail like the flower petals, but certain things you definitely want to have right, like your proportions of your vase. All right, it's time to start adding color. This one I'm going to be a little fast in this. I am going to slow this down some too. I am using these new pastels just to, again, work in some of these negative shapes, and all I'm doing right now is focusing on value, the lights, the mediums values, the dark values, and I'm just getting in a very general value study all over the whole painting with just a few pastels. All right, so that was kind of a creamy light colored new pastel, and now I'm using a medium lighter blue pastel just to get in the value of that's actually just a dish towel I have underneath there. But now notice I'm getting in some of the value. Let me slow this down here. Okay, this is real time, but notice the value on the sides of that cloth outside of the glass, and then that little area inside the glass. They're both a little bit lighter. And so all I'm doing, it's not like a whole lot of talent. I've just learned over the years to just see shapes, value, and color. And value comes before color. I don't even have all the same colors that are in the actual image. I have a 96 set of these new pastels, and if I get value right, it doesn't have to be the right color exactly. Also too, I wanted to talk about why I like the new pastels for working on regular paper that's unsanded. New pastels are harder, and one thing, they're not as messy. They're not as dusty. So if you have a problem with pastel dust, they're not as they don't make as much dust. I literally just laid them down on my counter here. I wouldn't have done that with regular super soft pastels. So my new pastels are great for travel, and they're just very convenient, and they work great on unsanded paper. All right, so once again, back to taking the mystery out of the fact that this glass is see-through. All I'm doing while I'm painting, not at this part, this is the actual shadow on the wall, but all I'm doing is seeing the actual shapes inside of the vase and the value, meaning the light or the dark. And really, if you can do that, you'll create a believable, transparent object such as a vase. Now, there are a couple of other things, and I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on drawing transparent glass, but I feel like I've figured it out and gotten better at it over the years, and I really like it. It's like a neat challenge. So I'm also going to be talking about some of the other things besides just literally painting the shapes, values, and colors that you see. There are other little tips and things that I'm going to share with you. Here I'm going to zoom in a bit so you can see a little bit more about what I was talking about with just the shapes and the values. Let's just stick with those two for now. I am just looking at the shapes and values within that vase. You see there's almost like a little hourglass shape of darkness, and where I'm working now is that top surface of the water, and it's a bit darker. So if you can learn to see those differences in value and just work with the shape, and once again realize this is an object that has dimension. Another thing I want to mention right here is we often have a tendency to feel like we have to draw a line. Now, I'm doing it just to kind of get my bearings of where this vase is, but I actually had a Patreon video not long ago where I talked about line versus edge. We don't necessarily want to create a line. We don't want to draw a vase. We want to create the illusion of the edge of the glass with value differences. Now I'm zooming in here again, and I want you to notice that on the sides of this glass, the vertical lines of the glass, you don't see a line. You don't have a drawn line. At the top of the vase on the left side, there is definitely no line. It's almost the same value as the wall, but you get that illusion. Our brains interpret it as glass because of the other values around it. So literally, paint what you see, not what you think you see. Now, as I work here, I am going to keep this sped up. Oh my goodness, if you guys knew of my Wi-Fi issues out here in the country, and I know I sound like a broken record talking about it, but I have to try to speed these up or they would never get uploaded. But I am going to give you some information of what I want you to notice while I paint. I'm actually going to read to you right now from one of the books I shared. My video just before this video was on the 9 best pastel books. Well, they're my 9 best. You might have others, but one of the books was the pastel book by Bill Creevy, Creevy, and he has a section on achieving transparent effects. So I'm going to read a little bit of that while you watch me paint here. He says, try to think of the object itself as a kind of clear frame or outline that surrounds the colors. The lines used to outline a clear object are rarely consistent in value. That's exactly what I was just talking about, looking at the left-hand side of that vase. You see the top left-hand side? I'm talking about the actual photo reference. There's no value differentiation at all until you move further down the vase, and then you can see dark versus light with the wall and the vase kind of in the middle of the vase there. So all right, let me continue what he's saying here. The lines, I'm repeating what he said. The lines used to outline a clear object are rarely consistent in value. Keep looking at that, because that's so true. One side of the object will have a dark outline, while the opposite side will be lighter. Careful observation, that's what I'm saying, will show you how to adjust these line and tone variations. So once again, paint what you see, not what you think you see. All I'm doing is representing the values that I see, the shapes and values that I see. And once you can, I hate to say turn your brain off to the fact that this is a clear glass, I think we just get mesmerized and confused instead of just looking at the shapes and values. So let me read more of what he says. Clear objects are three-dimensional in spite of their transparency. So adding highlights, reflections, and very lightly illuminated shadows will help make them look more convincing. But the most important thing is to observe very carefully how the clear objects themselves actually look in a given light. Remember that transparency, this is the sentence I think is the most important here. Transparency is not a lack of color, as most people think of it, but rather a variation of the adjacent color and the light. So I just wanted to read that because I thought he described that so well. Also too, here's another tip from me. I like to, of course, focus on getting my ellipses right, and that's going to make that illusion of a three-dimensional object. But I often focus on drawing or painting the interior objects of the vase prior to adding the reflections at the end. So I suggest, and I think this is probably what most artists would suggest, is that you preserve or resist the urge to add those reflections until the very end. Get those inner contents of the vase done, and get them done correctly, proportionately, perspectively, so that it's believable. I see, like now I'm working on the inner parts of that vase. You see I've got, well now I'm working on the bottom, but I've got the stems going in, the leaves going up. I've got that little ellipse at the top of the water, the surface water drawn hopefully somewhat correctly. I've got my ellipse now I'm doing at the bottom, or my curve, and that little ellipse at the bottom of the vase. So that's all going to give that illusion of a believable three-dimensional object such as a vase. And I'm still focusing on just value and shapes, and then you'll notice I'll talk about it again at the very end. Once I get those right is where I add those little reflections and sheens to give the impression that not only is the glass see-through and has depth, has a three-dimensional form, but it also is a three-dimensional object in itself and reflects light rather than just letting light go through it. So I guess that's the thing. Two things are happening here. We're seeing through the glass because it's clear, but it also has dimension. So it itself is also going to have reflections and dimension to it. And I hope I'm explaining this in a way, I'm explaining it how I think of it, but I hope it's in a way that maybe can demystify painting a clear object. The same rules apply as other subject matter, and hopefully with just a few techniques we can create that illusion of believable glass. And now I'm about halfway through, I know I'm speeding it up, but halfway through the content of this video, so I am going to add some music and let you guys just watch the rest of the process. But I want you to pay attention if you're not familiar with painting glass or you haven't done it a lot, but perhaps pay attention to the inner shapes that I'm creating within the glass, the correct values, hopefully, and the lack of a line, of a drawn line. It's literally just an edge of value next to another edge of value. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, add some music, and I hope you'll continue to watch and learn. I'll be back though. This is real time, by the way, where I'm getting to the point finally where I've created the interior of the vase, the transparency of the vase, and now I'm adding some of those little reflections that give it even more of that three-dimensional quality, in spite of the fact that it's a clear object. So I guess that's what we have to get our brains wrapped around, is it's see-through, but it has dimension and form at the same time. So I'm going to leave this real time for a bit so you can just watch me work. I'm still developing some of the values, and I'm starting to add the darker values. You notice this darker green that I'm using here, and that's giving more form and depth to the actual flowers and the things that are inside of the vase. Also too, again, I'm just working on drawing paper, and notice that I'm still able to layer a bit, And continue to watch though, because I am going to get to the flowers. I know they weren't the point of this video, but I do enjoy doing them. So continue to watch. And I have used the new pastels for the entire portion thus far, and really for the entire painting, except at the very end I grab three unison pastels to give a little bit more color to the flower petals. So, all right, now I'll add more music. Keep watching. Also, too, if you are not a patron of mine and you would like to become one, you not only support this channel. That was my hubby walking behind my drawing pad there. You not only support this channel. I've been doing this for years now, trying to bring art lessons to people who don't have resources to, and just because that's how I started. I couldn't go to workshops or anything, so that you becoming a patron would help. It does help this channel to keep videos coming. Also, you get extra content. For example, this lesson right here is a Patreon lesson for my patrons, and they will be doing a homework assignment from it over the weekend if they choose. It's not required, and submitting it to the patron homework album. So we have a lot of fun. You get extra content. It's $5 a month. You can cancel at any time. So if you'd like to support this channel on Patreon, I always have a clickable link at the end of the video. It's really easy. So all right, here's some more music. Keep watching, enjoy, and I'll be back at the end. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this video. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel. Once again, become a patron if you can, if you want to. And by the way, I will have this final painting available in my Etsy shop. It may not be immediately when I post this video because I'm going on a little trip, but it will be soon, and hopefully you'll see it available. I always have a link to my Etsy shop in the description section of the video. Happy painting, guys!